What real event in your life? Had it happened in a book or movie, would be obvious foreshadowing. The hundreds of times I joked about strengthening my immune system while eating something off the floor or something else gross or unsanitary. I have an autoimmune disease now. It just got too powerful. One of the few solid memories I have of my biological father is him sitting me down and walking me through his absolute favorite song. Not just pointing it out on the radio, making me, the small child, really understand the lyrics and the story behind them. He left when I was 6 to go to the gym. Ran off with a nanny. And I haven't seen him in 25 years. The song? Cats in the Cradle. Don't let anyone fool you, the worst kind of deadbeat dad is the stereotypical kind. My dad and I were just about to leave for my soccer game when I decided to rip a massive fart. I shat my pants. My dad starts laughing like a madman. Tears and stuff. Then proceeds to yell, "This is how you rip one." He shat his pants. I used to love watching TV. When my dad got sick with cancer, I would watch it to distract myself. In the week leading up to his death, I kept seeing this PSA about how this girl older than me, but around my age, had watched her father also battle cancer illness, how he was getting worse, eventually checking into the hospital, where the girl learned to accept and move on past his death and illness, as the father had died at the end of the commercial. I'm not talking about how this PSA only played on one channel. It was on every channel I would stop on. Sure enough, at the end of the week, my father signed on with hospice and died. While I took him dying hard, I think it definitely helped lessen the blow. Woke up on a very humid morning with thunderstorms in the forecast. Our dog was laying in the hallway in front of the bathroom. We opened the bathroom door before heading to work and told the dog, "If it gets too loud, just hide in here." Later that day a tornado hit our house. We lost our roof and most of our windows. Our dog survived with no injuries. Nobody else was home at the time. We were out signing a lease on a new rental house, a second bit of foreshadowing. I got home first, and he was acting super guilty like he thought we were going to blame him for the damage. We kept saying it's okay in a friendly sing-songy voice, but he didn't believe us. I think my story counts. Kept feeling like I was blacking out, but thought nothing of it. When I was a kid, whenever I was at middle school dances I'd stop what I was doing and black out a few seconds. Or riding my bike on one occasion and a matter of seconds later wake up on the ground. And then when I was 13 I had my first grand mal tonic-clonic seizure and was diagnosed with epilepsy. My doctors figured I'd been having absent seizures as a kid a whole lot, but since they're very small and not noticeable it went, well, unnoticed. Back when I was about to start high school, the whole family got together at my grandmother's house for an impromptu get-together. As I left with my mother I asked, "Is Grandma going to be alone tonight?" My mother confirmed my guess. When asked why I said I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. That night my grandmother had a massive stroke and wasn't found until 2.5 days later. She lived, but she wasn't the same. My parents and I ended up taking care of her for the last year of her life. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I called up there once we got home. My grandmother was also left lying alone for a day or two after having a stroke and falling out of bed. Breaks my heart to think about her stuck like that. Fortunately, my stepmom mentioned to my dad that his mom hadn't played words with friends that day. She usually played about 2 words a day with my stepmom. He was a little worried, but it was pretty late at night, so he called in the morning, and when she didn't answer he sent a neighbor over. She died a few days later in the hospital with some family around. I'm just thankful she didn't die alone on the floor. My cousin was an intensive care nurse. When I was 15 I was talking to her about her job, and she told me she was currently looking after a patient who had been burnt. I remember saying to her that it would be horrible to go through something like that. A week later my family home burns down and I get pretty badly burned. Fucking jinxed myself. My mom and dad had been married since she was 21. They had tried for a child for 15 years with no luck and my mom was told she was infertile. They were in Malaysia for her birthday and she got a palm reading from this old lady. She said, "You'll have a girl. Followed by a boy. You'll have a health scare and die at a ripe age." At 40. My mom had me, female. My brother was born 3 years later. My mum had a tumor removed from her ear canal making her deaf in that ear. She is now 66. I was taking care of my girlfriend while she had a really bad fever. The flu spread through her family and somehow made its rounds through my family, but luckily I didn't get sick. She commented that it was unfair that I never get sick. I thought back to when I last had to use a sick day at work and couldn't remember. I guess I was just pretty healthy or lucky. Later that week I was taking a shower when I noticed one of my testicles was a lot firmer and a bit bigger than the other. I did some quick research and came to the conclusion it was cancer. After many appointments and a surgery, sure enough, it was cancer. I got the cancer-free prognosis back in March, but it'll be under close monitoring for the next several years in case it makes a comeback. I appreciate everybody's well wishes. They seriously bring a smile to my face, and for all the men out there, please check your balls. Tell your brothers, your sons, your dads, your friends. Check your balls. I never thought it could happen to me, but here I am one nutting it, but totally healthy, because I just happened to catch it early. When I was younger I had a dream that my sister's dad was in a house fire. Woke up. Got really freaked out. Told my mum, and she did the standard routine of it's just a dream blah blah blah. That evening the dad called asking if he could crash at our house because his had caught fire. Creepy AF, and it wasn't the only dream I had as a child that was some weird foreshadowing of shitty events to come, and I haven't found a proper explanation for it yet. One of my first girlfriends when I was 14 was fairly morbid and depressed. We had a passionate relationship, but I ended things badly when I didn't know how to handle her emotional needs at that age. One of the things that I always associated with her from then on was the Amy Sedaris show Strangers with Candy. It was one of her favorite shows and we used to watch it together. I avoided the show for years because of the guilt associated with the way I'd handled the relationship. 6 years later, when I was in college, Strangers with Candy popped up on Netflix. I rewatched the whole series. And because of all of my nostalgic associations, I got the feeling that it might finally be time, what with Facebook and all, to reach out to her, apologize for my immature breakup of years before, and try to be friends. But that very month, after not hearing a word about her for all those years, I got a call from our old mutual friend that she had committed suicide. My wife, the beautiful British redhead, was annoyed as a girl by the fact that she had freckles. Her mother used to tell her that Americans loved freckles, and she'd wind up marrying a rich American someday. She was half right. Got a new boss at work. I remember sitting with my coworkers when one of them said, "This is the beginning of the end for us if we don't organize." Sure enough, this year we all went out for drinks together after our last official day as colleagues. Some were forced out. Many left voluntarily due to stress. This fucks me up every time I think about it. My younger brother turned 17 and he was really distraught because for years he never thought he'd make it to 17. He was happy, but you just knew how intensely he believed that feeling. 2 days shy of a month after his 17th birthday, he was shot and didn't make it. I had 2 friends in college and we all had the same double major. One of them had broken his femur a year or 2 before. And I was on crutches for a broken ankle at the time. We had a conversation like this, friend number 2. You two have a lot in common. You're both short and studying X and have broken your legs. I mean, all 3 of us have the same double major. Friend number 2. Well, okay. I guess I'm in the group too. But I don't want to have the injury in common with you guys. A week later, he broke both of his feet. Not my story. But it needs to be told. One of my teachers told me this. When she was still in college. She took health. The first thing they did in the class was watch a video on what to do if you were in a car accident and the car caught on fire. The video had a mom, dad, teenager, and a little kid in the car. My teacher doesn't know the rest of the video because the girl sitting next to her started having a seizure. 2 guys from the back grabbed the girl and carried her downstairs while my teacher grabbed the girl's belongings. They drove the girl to the emergency room and were told she might not make it. She made it and everything was fine. But a few months later that girl was driving with her mom, dad, and little brother when they were in a car accident and the car caught on fire. None of them made it. My teacher told us that this was a product of fate. Also, she told us this story to give us a reason to learn our classmates' names. She didn't know the girl's name. But one of the guys that carried her was Archie Manning. My grandpa drove me home one day, but couldn't remember where to go. It seemed like he was looking for the house we lived in a few years ago before we moved, which was unusual since Hughes came to our new house many times. He ended up being diagnosed with Alzheimer's soon after that incident when he crashed his car into a light pole. Saw my dad get hit by a sprinkler while in the car, so the seat behind him and the open window, laughed in the most mocking way possible before promptly getting cut off by the next splash of water, which must have been angled slightly differently. Don't know if that counts as foreshadowing. But it's definitely something I'd see coming if it were in a TV show. Rolled a 20-sided dice in the morning when I woke up. Got a 1. Proceeded to have a terrible fucking day. We were talking about getting arrested while smoking a spliff, then right after police came on bikes and arrested me. This happened to me once. I said, if we sit here guys, I swear the cops will be here in like 5 minutes. Watch. Everyone laughed. Everyone talked to the cop too. My husband and I were invited around to my dad and stepmom's house for a family dinner with my siblings. My dad and stepmom were being particularly mushy and loving to each other that night, smooching and snuggling. We generally show love in our household with inappropriate jokes and lovingly poking fun at each other. At the dinner table I exclaimed. "Oh gosh, you two calm down. Who's dying?" Turns out they had invited us around that night so my dad could tell me he had been given less than 12 months to live. Oh no. Is he still with us? This conversation was in January 2018 and he passed away last month 5 days before my wedding. Luckily he found it humorous that I am such an awkwardly foot-in-mouth kind of human. As he was the same. I pretty much struggled to make friends until 6th grade. Finally making friends and feeling a sense of belonging was the greatest thing ever. 7th grade was the shit. Then during the beginning of 8th grade something weird happened. All of my friends had classes together except me. We shared the same lunch, but I remember feeling incredibly left out because they were always talking about things I wasn't there for. They had inside jokes I didn't understand. I was alone again. I later learned my family was moving out of state. Within a month. We moved and I was literally back to nothing. I always saw that brief 8th grade year as a sort of foreshadowing of the storms to come at it. Thank you guys for the kind words. This was back in like 2007-8. My family ended up moving twice during my 9th grade year and then once more my senior year. Since I was a new student as a senior. I wasn't even in the yearbook and didn't have my senior portraits done. But by that point I didn't really care anymore. I moved in the summer between 5th and 6th grade and struggled a lot. Finally had some friends. But then moved midway through 7th grade and had to start all over again. It was tough and lonely. But I finally found friends in 8th grade. And then moved again during the summer before 9th. I can relate 100%. I used to call my friends up after I moved and feel sad hearing them tell different versions of the same stories that I should have been but was not a part of. When I was 7. I was lying on the floor petting my family's dachshund and told him. "I don't know what I'd do without you." He died 2 days later of a heart attack. He was 13 and lived a great life. But it was the first death I ever dealt with and I took it hard. He was my first best friend. My grandfather went off to Japan when he was 20. My father grew up in America and worked in animation. My mother was born in America, grew up in Japan, then worked in animation where she met my father. I then was born in America, got into animation, and left for Japan when I turned 20. I'm not sure if that's foreshadowing, but it's certainly synchronicity. I'd love to see a thread about synchronicity, but it's probably gonna get downvoted to hell and back before it catches eyes. I have the mouth of a sailor and I run it constantly. I had a teacher who I had gotten comfortable with over the course of high school and I ended up feeling comfortable to swear around him. He told me once that my mouth was gonna get me in trouble later in a professional setting if I didn't learn how to tone it down. Fast forward a couple of years and I was fired from my job for dropping an F-bomb in front of the company CFO. One of my co-workers was fired from his previous job for calling his boss a clipboard wanker. Swearing is a daily thing at my job and everyone finds that story hilarious. I guess he took things a bit too far with the freestyle swearing. Gotta stick to the proven basics.